Good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is reaching you guys. If yes, kindly type a yes on the chat box so that I can get to go ahead. Let me know if I am being heard loud and clear. Are you all able to hear me well? Let me know through the chat box, please. Thank you. All right. Okay, thanks for giving me a go ahead. So I guess we can begin this session. All right. Thank you, IDC Clash and Ahmed. Okay, so that now we are going to begin. First of all, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined me here for this session, which is on IELTS Speaking by Leverage IELTS, powered by Leverage Edu. My name is V. Kritika Krishna. I am one of the IELTS experts here at Leverage IELTS. And today we are going to look into this segment called Speaking of IELTS, where I hope that you guys might already be aware that it is an English language proficiency test taken for your education abroad or for the purpose of immigration. And this would have these four skills: listening, reading, writing, speaking, where speaking is the part which I consider to be one of the most interesting ones as well. So before we get started, may I know from you guys, from the participants who have joined, if any one of you has taken the test before or has booked the exam? If you have booked it, let me also know when you're going to take it. Is it anytime sooner? Maybe in a week, 10 days, maybe next month? Not yet. Okay. All right. All right. And anybody else who may have booked the exam or just planning, haven't decided yet? If so, let me know through the chat box. So my purpose was asking this was to apprise you of the fact that the speaking test of IELTS can happen any day before or after the main examination, that is listening, reading, writing. So whichever date of the examination, if anyone has booked, let's say we are taking the 11th May as our examination day. So a speaking test can be held either before 11th May or even after 11th May, and in certain cases, even on the 11th May. Oh, all right, Madhuri. Thank you for letting me know. So, Saturday, just a few more days. All the best. I hope the session is going to help you today. So, this speaking test, let's first quickly have an overview to the test, and then we'll get into the to its different parts and the tips. First, it's going to be a one-to-one test and a test where you're going to have a face-to-face interview with an examiner. And this test, the duration will be nearly 11 to 14 minutes, nothing more, nothing less. So it's kind of the shortest part of the entire segment. If we take listening, reading, writing, and then speaking, this is going to be the shortest of all. uh, could be slightly intimidating because you have an examiner sitting and assessing you, but it is one of the interesting parts of the test. Now, the whole test, which is in 11 to 14 minutes, it's divided in three parts, guys. So we call them part one, two, three. When you're going to meet the examiner and start with the test, they're not going to tell you, okay, I'm giving you part one or two or three. It happens like a conversation. So this entire test is actually a conversation all about you, and the questions are majorly personal questions. Yes, a few general ones will be there. We'll get acquainted to it, but they are mostly personal question, which means it's all about you, and that means it is going to be easy to answer in certain questions that you get. So now let's look at what are these three parts, how in 11 14 minutes are they going to divide it, what questions can they possibly ask, what are some of the recent questions which I think Madhuri, this is going to help you because you have your exam on Saturday. Let me also tell you that questions that have been asked before, you never know they'll come again. So mostly questions get repeated. So you should be aware of what has been asked so far. But then anything can be asked. By anything, I mean anything. So you cannot just prepare with a few questions and feel, okay, I'm done. This is what they'll ask. They can ask you anything because it's about you and your life. So let's start with part one. Now, when you'll go to the exam center, you're going to carry your passport with you. And the first few questions would be to check your identity, and then it just starts. The examiner introduces himself, tells you that he's going to conduct this exam, and your entire speech gets recorded. So, when he's going to start with that first part, the questions are going to be pretty basic. First three, which you can expect surely, would be: may I know your full name? Where are you from? Are you a student or do you work? So, where you're from, what your occupation is, your full name, that surely will be asked. And then what? Now he is going to ask you a lot of questions which would be based on any kind of familiar theme pertaining to your life. There are many themes which could be about your likes, dislikes, where you live, what you do, about your friends, about your family, about the food that you like to eat, and many more. Now, in this part, there's something that I want you to keep in mind. If you have a pen and paper handy, please, you can feel free to take notes. Number one, the questions are going to be pretty basic. That doesn't mean that, okay, it's a basic question, so I can get done with a short answer. They are expecting you to give an answer, but it should not be a very limited answer. By that, I mean to say, do not give answer anywhere throughout the test, especially part one when we talk about. Do not give answers in few words. Your answer should always be framed in sentences, one or two. Even, for instance, let's say basic question like, where are you from? And I answer, Delhi, New Delhi, India. So it's better to give a full sentence. I belong to New Delhi, India. I am from New Delhi, India. What's your full name? My name is V. Kritika Krishna, and please feel free to call me by my first name, Kritika. So this way, you're just telling your examiner that you're comfortable using English language and not restricting yourself with just few words. So please keep in mind, because most questions of part one, they can be kind of, a few questions can be kind of close ended, which may begin with do you, have you, would you. So there is a possibility that I can simply say yes and my answer is done, or I can simply say no and my answer is done. So never do that. Answer in complete sentences. Next, feel free to speak your mind. So there is no good or bad answer. There is no right or wrong answer. All answers are valid because we all are different. So there can be multiple questions that can come. Just keep in mind, when the question is asked, what kind of verbs are being used? Is it question about your present, past, or future? Because most likely in the first part, you could experience questions which are about your routine life. But yes, there can be one or two which could be connecting you to your past moments, or maybe predicting what you may do in the future. So I'll take a very interesting example of a recent question. Please pay attention. Now, this question is about boring things. So one of the questions that one of our students also got was asking him that what are the kind of things that bore you? What are the kind of things that bore you? So anything that comes to your mind, guys, put it in the chat box. I'm sure that a couple of things would come in your mind. And in the exam, you don't have to come up with an answer which is extraordinary. There could be anything that can bore you. That could be a particular TV program. Or maybe if you are students, listening to a particular lecture from any one of your professors could also be a boring thing. Or maybe talking to one of your friends who who keeps talking about something which is irrelevant or not quite interesting could also bore you. So it can be any answer. But the point is, just don't say my physics lecture, this particular TV program. You have to frame it in a sentence. So this is one of the questions that we got in the test. Or let's say it can be connecting to the past. For instance, what has been the most boring thing that you did in your childhood? Or let's say when you were young? Anything can come. So this is now taking you to the past. So ensure that your answer is being delivered also in the past tense. Maybe if you have never done anything boring, your life has been super happening, that's absolutely fine. Your answer could be, I have never experienced anything like that at all. As far as my memory goes, I have always had an interesting life with a lot of interesting chapters and episodes. That could also be an answer. But if you can vividly remember something, you can mention that. So see, I'm giving you both type of answers where the answer could be something that really happened or something that you never experienced. Speak your mind. Whatever strikes you here at that moment, just give that answer. Or let's take another example related to boring things, which could be, what would you do if you feel bored? Now, this is asking you in certain circumstances, if such a situation arises, what would you do? So please take a note of those verbs which are coming here, because are they talking about your actions that you do in routine, about the past or the future? Most frequent questions would be connecting to our present, but yes, a few can be related to past and future. So we must pay attention. And all our answers should be in the form of sentences, no few words. Am I making it clear? Please type a yes if you're able to understand. And with that, let me share some more questions. So, there has been a question on advertisements. Now, you may feel this is nothing concerning my life. How could this be a basic question? So, hear me out. It could be, do you watch a lot of advertisements? Where do you watch it? On TV or on internet? Do you talk about advertisements with people? Do you buy products when you watch an advertisement? You see, all my questions are, do you, right? So it is about ads, but it's not asking you to talk about a particular ad. It's simply asking you, do you watch advertisements? Where do you watch it? When do you watch it? Do you even purchase things based on an advertisements? So this also has been some of the recent questions that came. Or even about accessories, you can get questions like a watch. Do you wear a watch? Have you ever got watch as a gift? On what occasions do you wear a watch? Or do you prefer buying where do you prefer buying watches from? These kind of questions can also be there. So some questions you will find pretty easy to answer, and some can sometimes surprise you that why is he even asking me about watches. But remember, all the questions that are being asked, they're already set for the candidates. So don't think that the examiner is trying to ask you a question based on your answer. It's already been set, and the examiner ought to ask each of those which is there on his questionnaire. So when it comes to part 1, be clear, be confident, be comfortable in what you are saying. And a tip for those people who are aspiring to get a 7 plus, especially for this particular part of the speaking test, that tip would be to avoid giving your answer in the same format in which the question is framed. Like, do you have many friends? Yes, I have many friends. So, what is happening here? I'm not saying that it's an incorrect form of presenting our response, but it is just kind of a copy pasted version. So, if you are one of those who has a requirement of a 7 plus, or who wants a 7 plus and wants to achieve that high score, it's better to do more of paraphrasing. Do you have a large group of friends or small? Well, I have a group of, and then maybe you mention the number. I have more than 20 friends in my circle. I have a large group which comes from my school, from the university that I went to, my neighbors, and also my colleagues. So, see, here is a way of answering the same question, that I have a large group. But you're not confining yourself to giving an answer which just ends with that. So add frequency, add reasons, compare it with the time of your past, and try to elongate it so that you can make it up to 2 sentences or even 3. Hope you are able to follow this. That's about the first part of your speaking test. So I repeat a couple of recent questions which were about themes, boring things, could be about advertisements. There have been also questions about dream. Do you remember your dreams when you wake up? Or do you talk about your dreams with other people? or it has also been about sitting. Such a weird theme, but the question is, how often do you sit in a day? Where do you usually sit? Do you think a lot when you sit? So these kind of questions have also been there. So with this, let's now jump to the next part, which is the most crucial part of your assessment, and that's part 2. This part is also called the cue card round, because in this part you are given a cue card. On that cue card there is a topic presented, and again the topic is going to be personal. In this round, things that you need to take care of is a, the topic cannot be changed, so whatever you get you need to speak on it. And two, this particular round has a time limit in terms of how much can you speak. So the first round and maybe even in the third when you'll go, there is no time limit per question, but here there is. You can speak for up to 2 minutes, but your speech has to cover minimum 1 minute, else the examiner will ask you to continue. So here there is this task that we need to accomplish, which is to keep our content between 1 and 2 minutes. So a couple of points, first of all, that I would like to tell you would be that we need to develop our answer really well here, that we are crossing that 1 minute mark. And in this round, and only in this round, you get 1 minute prep time. Use that to the fullest. So the moment you look at the topic, which could be describe either some type of person, place, object, or a situation. I'll give examples in a bit. Always check the first line. Describe what? There would be certain bullet points, which is the cue, the hint. And those points are given to you so that you can develop your answer further. But pay attention to the first and the last point, which says explain why, explain how, explain whether, explain if. So these two things you need to keep etched in your memory and develop more information related to that. And for this, what would help you is the WH family. What do I mean by that? What, when, where, which, how often, how many, how much. With these, we can create a lot of questions which can help us to develop our answer. So, how do we do that? Let's say if there is any topic. Number one, let's say the question, I'll give you some examples of the recently asked ones. So, there has been a question which says, describe an interesting old person that you know, or an interesting neighbor, or taking a place into consideration. Talk about a place you visited where the air was polluted. This has been one of the recent questions. Of course, if you are not from Delhi, you can talk about Delhi for sure. And describe a person with whom you really like to spend time with. So, so I gave you a few examples of person, place, and they can also be of something that you do. For example, describe an activity you engage yourself in to stay fit. One of the questions. So I'll suggest you to do one thing, which is called, to develop your answer for about over a minute, something that I call as a BDD approach, which I say background, disclose, details. These topics require you to give details. But mostly test takers make this mistake. They start telling all the details in less than 1 minute time, and then they wonder, what should I add now? So that's the challenge in part 2. So what you should do is keep a theme in that 1 minute prep time. Keep your beginning and closing very clear. How do you want to start the topic with, and how do you want to end? Because in that spontaneity, then you will be able to keep adding, because you have the cue with you, which is your WH family. So when you're preparing, be very clear and make a kind of a background theme in your mind. For instance, describe an activity that you engage in to keep fit. Now, you might be doing a lot of things, right, guys? You might be doing a lot of things to stay fit. Maybe, maybe not. But let's not name that directly. That's called disclosing. So when you disclose, you are not, try to come gradually to the theme so that you can consume about initial 10-15 seconds to say what the theme is about and then start giving the details. So maybe let's say I say that it's really essential for each and every person to keep themselves active and fit. I am a person who has most of the hours sitting at one place and doing my official work. And it becomes really important for me to keep moving and engage in activities that could help me not get affected by different health ailments. And for this purpose, I engage myself in, and now I disclose. So, see, I took almost about 20 seconds to come to the topic. I started with the background, and now I disclose that for this purpose I do, and then you name the activity that you do. And now you do the same thing which is there on your cue card. Which activity, when do you do it, where do you do it, how do you do it, or maybe let's say, is there somebody who is coaching you to do it? How frequently do you do it? There's so many points that we can mention. And most important, what has been the effect of doing that activity can also be incorporated. If you're doing all this with the background, then disclosing gradually, and then starting to give the details, you can easily cross 1 minute. Easily, you can cross 1 minute. But a lot of us may just start with the information that is being given, they disclose, they give the details, and it's just been 45, 50 seconds, which is not adequate. So, in this part, please use the BDD concept. And also, again, there is no right wrong answer. If you digress and you go to a different topic altogether, then you may lose score only because you may not be using topic specific vocabulary. So when will the topic specific vocabulary come? When you speak on that topic. So a lot of test takers make this mistake that they go on to a different track. So try avoiding doing so. So that was about part two, guys. Where I would repeat a couple of topics that have come recently, which is an interesting old person, an interesting neighbor, a person with whom you might like to spend time with, and an activity to make you stay fit, and even questions where I talked about a place which you visited where the air was polluted. Delhi comes to my mind first. Now, let's talk about another part in continuation, which is part three. This part requires you to give elaborate answers. This is called a discussion round. So, no more personal kind of questions. What do you like? Where do you go? How do you do it? No. So, it would be more about people, culture, communities, countries. And then these questions will be always dependent on the theme that you got in the cue card. That is in the second part. So let's say, for example, your question in the cue card is talk about an activity that you engage in to keep yourself fit. So fitness, health is something that is being derived out of it. So expect questions which will be pertaining to these. What kind of questions? There'll be more questions where you need to develop more ideas, and it's not just about you. So to give you an example, couple of questions that you can expect, the type category is questions where you list information, or you compare, or maybe you give suggestion, or you talk about a hypothetical situation or a prediction. I'll give you an example of listing. We talked about an activity we do. Let's say whichever you chose. Let's say I talked about dancing and I explained that I do dancing and this is how it helps me keep fit. Now comes the third part, and the examiner may ask, okay, can you tell me what kind of activities do people in your country perform to keep themselves fit? So here, if it's not about me, it's about people in my country. So there are a number of things that people do to maintain their fitness levels. So you just have to mention them. But you might think, oh, it's so easy. So I can simply say maybe yoga, exercise, maybe some may say cross fitness, Zumba, aerobics. So you can't name like pointers. Now what you need to use is connect your information. So when you're giving answer in part 3, there is no fixed length, but then try to make it just like in writing we have paragraphs. So it should not sound like a point but a paragraph. Well, there are numerous activities that people in India perform to ensure that they are maintaining their health and fitness levels. So this is a beginning, opening statement. I have seen a lot of people perform regular exercises in the morning. So that becomes one of my points. Not just that, I have seen people being inclined towards all forms of fitness, such as yoga, many doing cross fitness, many performing different type of sport to ensure that they are outdoors and they have regular movement, and this way they ensure that they are keeping fit. So what did I do? I did not say sport, yoga, exercise, zumba. I'm not saying like that. So it should not be thrown like bullet points. It should always be connected. Am I making it clear, guys? Yes. Clash, you would definitely get a paper and a pencil where you are able to take notes. So you're not going to take notes on the cue card. You will be separately provided that. Welcome, Raman. And hi, Harshvardhan. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. I'll get back and we'll have a short Q&A towards the end. So I was talking about part 3, discussion, where there can be questions to list. So when you're listing, everybody, please make sure you're making use of something called connectors. What are they? Like the name says, it's connecting, it's combining your information, or it is uniting your information. It is signaling to the examiner what you're going to say. For example, now even I have used a connector just now. For example, I'm trying to give you an example of connector. So I gave you an answer that people perform a large number of activities to keep themselves fit when I talk about my country, India. Firstly, I have seen, firstly, then I come to another point. Not just that, apart from all these, some people also do, or moreover, or besides, when I'm using these words, I'm trying to tell my examiner that, hey, I have another point which is related to the previous one. That's called a connector to add or to list. Now, your questions will not just be on listing, they can also be questions on comparing. For example, now the question could be, okay, so what, how different are the fitness related activities that young people perform from those that old people perform? So now you have two different entities, young people versus old people. So there can be some differences in the activities that they do. So when you're giving answer to comparing or showing contrast related questions, then ensure that those connectors are applied. Let's say young people do a set of activities, you mentioned that. And when you show the transition that you're moving to the older people, you say, on the other hand, or in contrast, or on the contrary, what older people do is, so when we say on the contrary, in contrast, whereas, or maybe saying on one hand, on the other hand, when we are trying to talk about two different entities, we are trying to compare. So these connectors, what do? They allow you to bring that unity in the answer. Plus, it will allow you not make your answer sound as if, they are very short few sentences just thrown at the examiner. And it will sound better. There would be a good flow. So what connectors can we actually put to use? There are connectors to list. There are connectors to compare. There are also connectors to give example, like for example, to illustrate, to quote an example, well, to cite an example, I must say. So these become connectors to give example. Or it could be to show cause and effect, as a result, as a consequence, owing to, due to. When you're using all these, you're letting your examiner know that you are able to unite information well. And most important in this part, see, there is again no right wrong answer throughout the speaking test. You should know that your answer seems relevant, adequate. What is adequate? Adequate comes from the length. So first part, a few sentences, 2 to 3. Second part is a speech. So you need to keep talking till you know that 1 minute time is not up. And for that, what you should do is you should practice with a timer on for you. Because in the exam, you can't see the time. So when you're practicing, I would recommend that you keep your content always reaching over 1 minute, touching about 1.5, 1 minute 20, 30 seconds is also fine. But as much as you can elongate, that's good. What would happen? The max that could happen is 2 minutes time is up and examiner says that would be all. Should we worry if that happens? Not at all. Time is up, he moves on to the next part. So practice it this way. But in the third part, again, it's really not easy for us to tell you. It would be quite vague to tell you that what is an adequate length. So some questions you may speak longer, some question can be comparatively shorter. It's okay. But you should know that you have validated your point, you've justified it well, and it turns out to be a couple of sentences. But it should never be just few words or just one sentence and ending your answer. So the use of connectors and making a speech out of it would be more helpful, would be more useful for getting better marks. Are we able to understand till here, everybody? Please type a yes to give me a go ahead. Yes, no, maybe. See, taking the IELTS exam is one thing. When we talk about passing, that depends on your requirement, tomboy. Okay, it depends on the requirement. So you need to first see why you're taking the exam and what is the score requirement. Based on the score requirement, you need to start preparing. uh, Figure out like where you are lacking. Is it fluency? Is it not being able to get ideas? Because I feel that most of us may be able to talk, but we don't have right ideas. And now for that, let me give you some final tips. I hope that would help you here to identify how you can pass. First, all of you must familiarize yourself with the question types that come in the speaking test for all parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Gain familiarity, because that would allow you to know, okay, these type of expected questions are there, and frame your answers on it and speak that out. It should not be mental process. Speak them out. When you're more aware, you're making those answers, you're giving yourself more ideas. So that would help. Step 1. Step 2, don't hesitate to say what you actually do. A lot of us may tend to think that, let me try to make the answer a bit impressive. It's not required. So just speak your mind. What you do, you do. If you don't do a particular activity, tell them that clearly. So whether the answer is in positive or negative, that's okay. There is no negative marks for that. Don't try to impress the examiner. Focus on clearly speaking rather than trying to make it, flamboyant. It's really not needed. And next point is the use of connectors. I gave you a full example that where you list, where you compare and show contrast, where you give example, where you may show cause and effect. You need to keep that in mind. And don't worry if you are being interrupted by the examiner. That happens in a natural conversation only because he is running short of time, because it's a time test, or you may be speaking adequately already. So if you are stopped and he moves on to the next question, it's okay. But yes, in part 3, a lot of us may give answers, but you may be just beating around the bush. You're not coming to the right point then and there. That you shouldn't be doing, because if he doesn't get the right answer, he'll move on to the next question and yours is unanswered. So always give direct answers, maybe attach details if need be. And lastly, seek clarification if need be, guys. What do I mean by that? Sometimes you may naturally not understand the question. It's all right. You may not understand something that I may say, or I may not understand which you might, deliver to me. So, what should we do? We should clarify. Do ask the examiner to repeat the question if need be. Right? Those would be some of the final tips for you guys. Talking about idiomatic expressions, you can use them, but use them in such a way that it's naturally coming up. You're naturally uttering it. You're not memorizing, hundreds of idioms and trying to put an idiom in every sentence. It's not needed. Let it be natural wherever it is turning out naturally and it makes sense. And sure, we have our Leverage Edu app, of course. You can put that to use. And we have our IELTS community, guys, where you can find many other test takers like you and a pool of our dedicated team, the trainers, who put a lot of useful information for you to be able to crack this exam. So, yes, please, Harshvardhan, please, you can install the app and make the most of it. What type of questions are asked in speaking exam? That's what we talked about, tomboy. That's what we were talking about throughout. I think you joined in late. So, part one, basic questions, familiar themes. Part two, a topic on which you are asked to speak for about 1 to 2 minutes. And part three would be the part where you give lot of details on the same theme, but these will be general questions. Yeah. So these are a couple of things that you guys need to keep in mind. And if Madhuri is still here, all the best for your exam. Saturday is not far away, so I hope that you guys prepare well. It's a matter of knowing the theme, knowing the nuances, and then just answering. Be yourself, speak your mind, and stay calm and confident, and don't forget to wear a smile on your speaking examination, and crack it with the highest possible score. All right. And okay, that's great, Harshvardhan. So I guess we'll be able to meet each other in many more sessions like these. All right. So all the best, everybody. That would be all for now. I'll see you soon in another webinar. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you are aware of all the tips and tricks that are being shared by our IELTS expert at Leverage IELTS. Stay tuned and take care. Bye bye.